Lightsabers. How do they work? Well, I'm going to show you. Let's go! So, in my last video, I gave an overview of all of these Star Wars assets and scripts that I built and how you can import them. And if you didn't see that, I suggest checking it out. In this video, I'm going to go into detail about lightsabers and exactly what they are made of, how the script works, and how you can make one yourself. First of all, let's just do an overview of exactly what's going on with them. I actually laid it out here so you can pick them up. They actually have some physics to them. You press the trigger button, they turn on. There's a sound when they turn on. There is this hum that happens. You can turn them off, of course. When they are on, they will register a hit with the player. They will also register hits with each other. And the other cool thing with them is if you throw it in the open state, it comes back to your hand. And if you throw it in the closed state or just drop it, it goes back to its home. Very cool. So it actually takes quite a bit to make that all happen, but it's all totally doable, and I'm going to show you how. All right, so let's say we want to make a new lightsaber. We go into our build mode. Here we are. Oh boy, there's a lot of stuff going on here. So each of these lightsabers is made of a lot of different components, but we can really break them down into three things. We have the hilt, we have the blade, and then we have the effects that are attached to them. So let's start with the hilt, because that's going to be the easiest one. You can do this any way you want. Really, it's up to your imagination, what you want it to look like. You can make it movie accurate, you can make your own. Let's just make a super, super easy, super, super quick blade. I'm going to use the snap tool to make sure things are even. So, okay, so we have this. I'm actually kind of making a version of Ahsoka's lightsaber. That should be fun. Let's see. Can I snap this to the edge here? There you go. Make sure it's even. Tuck it in a little bit. Make a second one. Let's see. Tuck that in. That's it. I'm not going to worry about making this super even for this purposes, because I think there's more interesting things to get to. Okay, but we do want to make a little button. Let's make this little button. Sometimes it is very hard for me to just make something simple. I kind of want it to be detailed. I want it to be accurate. It's, well, it's the cross that I bear. Okay, so we'll do a little button up here. And that's pretty much it. Let's make a style for it. I'm actually not going to make it metal. I'm going to make it plastic, do this nice creamy color. We want the texture to be nice and smooth. Look at that. All right, and for the button, I feel like hers is actually dark, so let's just do that. Again, you can make these as elaborate or as simple as you want. In this case, it's pretty simple. You can always go back, embellish it more, change it around, anything you want. So, but anyway, this is the basic hilt. We want to look and see, make sure this is even. All right, let's select all of this, and we're going to thumb over to the left to group. And you know what? Just to keep things organized, we're in fact even going to call this. We're going to call this new saber hilt. Okay. Now, we don't actually need to do that much with this because there's not going to be any scripts running on it. It's just here for the design. Anyway, so after we do this, well, actually, before that, let's make sure that it's about the right size. We can use our little spawn point as a guide. That seems about right. We can compare it to our other ones. Oh, a little bigger than we usually have it. All right, that's about right. Okay, so now we have our hilt. What do we need next? We're going to need our blade. The blade is going to be a really key part of this. No surprise there. And so we need to think about what we want the blade to do. So we'll get it to be about the right width. That seems about right. It doesn't have to fill up the whole space. Then we want to get it the right length, of course. And what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that this is evenly in the center. That seems a little short. We can make it a little longer. Okay, that seems about right to me. Now, what are we going to do with the blade? We're going to scale it, right? That because we want it to extend out. But if we simply scale this cylinder, it's going to scale from the middle, and we don't want that. We want it to rise out of here. So how do we accomplish that? Well, what we're actually going to do is we're going to duplicate this, and we're going to put a version of this blade right here. So that way, it's going to scale out from here. But what do we do with this one? We obviously don't want it coming out the back and hitting us. So we're going to make this second one invisible and non-collidable. So you just turn that off. Pretty easy. So that way, this whole thing is going to scale from the middle, and when it scales out, it's going to scale the blade. The other thing that we want to do here in advance, and again, you can do this later, but let's just set it up now. We want this to collide with players and objects. So we're going to need to put a trigger on it because there are going to be certain events that happen when the trigger is hit. So again, we'll make sure this is lined up and nice and even. Come on, there we go. That's probably a little wider than it needs to be. Let's make it a little narrower. Okay. The problem here is that a trigger cannot be set off by both players and objects. It has to be one or the other. So if you want both, you're actually going to have to make both. We can extend this through the blade, and then what we're actually going to do is just hit duplicate, go over, and we're going to make another trigger. So both of these triggers are running through the length of the blade. Let's make sure we can keep this organized as well. So this one, we're going to call this our, let's just say, object hit trigger, and we're gonna make sure that later this is set on objects. For now, we're gonna say it's objects tagged saber. So it's gonna detect when another object that is tagged saber enters the trigger. We're gonna put an effect on it, make it clash. The other one we're gonna do, this is the second trigger, and this is gonna be our player trigger. So then when a player enters it, it's going to set off a hit event. So we're going to keep both of these triggers on. Leave these trigger boxes here because we're going to need to connect them later. And then we're going to select through all of this, including our non-visible or invisible and non-collidable object. This is all going to be the blade. We're going to group them. And there you go. Oh, last thing, very importantly, is our style. We're going to make this white. We're going to make this glow. We're going to make it super glowy. And we just get right in here. Boom. Awesome. And obviously, if you want it red, you can make it red. But we don't want that, so let's make it white. Okay. Cool. So what you're going to do is you're going to take the blade right from the middle, and we are going to line it up in the middle of our lightsaber. Does that look even? That looks pretty even to me. All right, there it is. So that's the basic model. There's only one thing left that we need to do on the saber itself, and that is add the effects. So what effects are we going to have? We're going to have a bunch of sounds, right? The on sound, the hit sound, that kind of hum that happens when it's on. We're going to want all of those. So in our build menu, we're going to go to sounds, effects. We can search through them. We can use some keywords, laser, look at that. So we have no energy. That's kind of interesting. All right. Weapon, laser, sword, hit. We definitely want that one. What's this one? That says swing. That's actually going to be tricky, so we'll do that one later maybe. Weapon, laser, sword, loop. Sounds pretty good to me. We're going to want this one. And there it is, laser sword start. We can also do laser sword end. We can do both of these, but honestly, they sound almost exactly the same. So let's just do this one. We'll attach it for both starting and stopping. We're going to keep these open over here as well because we're going to have to attach them to the script later. So it just kind of helps to have them out. A couple things on these. We don't want them to play on start, of course, so we're going to turn that off. Check some other things. We don't want them global, so that's all off. Maximum distance, this is always quite far, so I generally just turn this down as well. Okay, we'll get into these later. Also, let's make these a little smaller. Let's put them let's just put them right here. And then we're going to group all of this together. Look at that. Here's the group. Boom. This entire group we're going to call our new saber. There it is. New. All right. And this is what we're going to run the script on. Now, the other thing with our new saber is to go back inside of it. See, here we have the hilt. Here we have the whole saber. Let's see. Let me click inside. Hold on a second. We're going to click inside that. And now I'm just going to select the blade itself. And we're just going to call that its own thing because that'll be helpful as well. New saber blade. All right. Click out of it. And so we can put these side by side. Okay, so now we have our saber. Oh, the other thing that we want to do, of course, is for the saber itself, we're going to want to make this interactive. We're going to certainly make it grabbable. We're also going to add physics, of course, so you can throw it. Let's just stick with grabbable for now so it doesn't fall and get annoying. We're also going to want to use a grab anchor. You can find that in this more section. And that's going to put this hand here, and we're going to be able to control where exactly we hold it. So let's just put it there. For now, we can, again, always come back and adjust later. Okay. So, well, what does that look like? Let's check it out. All right, not bad. A little short. So we can go in and expand that. For now, let's just leave it as is. But that's basically it. So what's up with the script? Because that's what's going to make this whole thing run. Well, we're going to attach that, but let's actually get into it and break it down. Now, I want to be really clear here. This didn't all come together kind of in this nice linear fashion. I had a really simple script when I started, and then just kept on adding and adding and adding to it as I learned how to do new stuff. So this is definitely the final version. But let's look at exactly what's going on here. So actually, let's look at, oh, excuse me. Horizon Worlds has been kind of sticky with this movement. It's they changed something and it's been a little bit tougher to navigate, but maybe they'll fix that later. So here is our variables panel. Here's where you create the variables. There's a bunch of stuff here. I just kind of want to show you real quick. We have our starting position and our starting rotation variable. We have the blade variable. We have these various sound and effects variables. We have our Boolean variable. This is the true or false. That's going to basically determine are we turning the blade on or off, because that's done with the same button. We have our triggers. That's just an object variable, but that's going to be connected to the object trigger and the player trigger that we created earlier. And then we have our two player variables. Again, all of these you can set here, control what kind of variable it is in this list. But these are all what's going to be defined in the script. So when the world is started, we're doing a bunch of stuff to get the saber ready for action. Well, first of all, we're going to set the hit trigger detection to false and the object trigger detection to false. Now, this is something I only did recently because what was happening was when you would pick up the saber, the trigger was still kind of inside, even though it was scaled down. So you would do this, and it would still hit you. And that's, hello. And that's no fun. So I turned the trigger detection off when the saber is off. That way it doesn't accidentally hit you. And you can find that, I believe that should be in your Actions tab. Yeah, Set Trigger Detection. You just pop that over here. So that's the first thing we do, is we make sure it's safe to pick up. Then, because we want the saber to return to its original position when we let go of it, we want to set that starting position. And so what do we say? We say set, this one of our variables here, starting position. We want to set the starting position variable to what? To the position of the self. We're also going to do the same thing with the rotation so that it looks nice and neat. Set the rotation variable to the rotation of the self, so that when the world starts, it says, okay, this is your home. This is where you go back to, as we define later in the script. A lot of scripts are going to have this kind of setup because you don't want, things just floating around randomly. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to scale the blade down. So the blade, as you can see here, is already starting in its full position. But when the world starts, we want to make sure that blade is small. So we want it to be as small as it can be, and they're 0.01, 0.01, 0.01 for all the XYZ vector values. And again, you can find the scale, the scale operation in this motion tab, scale to, and then you would put a vector in here. You can find the vector input right there. So, and then the last thing we're going to do is we are going to set our Boolean variable. Now, like I said, the Boolean variable is one I created here. These get kind of confusing, I'll be totally honest with you. Basically, it says saber on. It's not actually controlling whether the saber is on or not. It's just a true or false statement. And so the question here is really, should I turn the saber on? And I'm going to say true. Again, this isn't going to control the actual motion or the scaling. It's just a true or false statement, so it knows what it has to do. Okay, so next, how do we interact with the saber? Well, we have to grab it. So when the object is grabbed by player, we want a couple things to happen. We want to set the player ID to the player. That's going to come in handy later when it has to know who to return to. So that's the first thing we're going to do. Also, these two are going to come into play in a bit, but so this is kind of anticipating some stuff that's going to happen. When the saber returns to the player, I actually turn the gravity off, so it's going to kind of float. Well, when you actually grab it, we want to set that gravity back to true. So that's, again, anticipating something that's going to happen later. And the other thing that we're going to do is we're going to cancel sending the event return, just in case it's in the process of going back to its starting position. If you grab it, we want to stop that. So we're going to cancel sending that event. Well, now, here's where the real magic happens. So when the index trigger is pressed while grabbed by the player, we want to have the saber obviously turn on. If it's already on, we want it to turn off. We also want to play the on sound. So, when it goes up, you hear the zoom. I think that's the official name for it. So this is where our Boolean variables come in. If saber on is set to true, and recall we already set it to true up here, you are going to scale the blade to 1, 1, 1s, to its full size over time. And again, in the motion tab here, you can choose scale to, or you can choose scale to over time. You can make this slow for a really dramatic effect. 0.3 felt about right to me. And again, remember, the blade is actually a variable, an object variable. It's one of the first ones that we created here. So that's what's going to make the blade go up. This sound is going to play the sound. We also want to set the hit trigger detection to true and the object detection to true. Remember, because we turned them off over here. Well, now we want the saber active. We want it hitting things. So we want the triggers to be true. We also want to play that sound loop That's that kind of that thrum that continues through it. We want to make sure that that's playing, and so when it turns on, we're going to have that. Cool? Okay, so that's what happens if our Boolean variable saber on is true. That's what's going to expand the blade. We are also going to have to set up a situation where you turn it off, right? So the blade is already expanded. So what we have to do here is make sure that once we press the button, we actually flip our Boolean variable so that it knows that next time it's going to do the opposite. So actually down here, set trigger index down to self, this is going to send this event to the script. And when we send that event, we're going to set saber on to not saber on. Basically say, whatever you were before, go to the opposite. If you were true before, send this event and make it false so that we know that next time the trigger is placed, we're going to do what it says when it's false. Now, this is actually really important. You couldn't just put this up here with these guys, because what would happen is it would just get confused. It would say, well, is it on or is it off? Or that is say, is it true? Is it false? You'd have this guy here that says set it to its opposite, and it would kind of lose its mind a little bit. So that's why we need to send this as a separate event, give it just a tiny little delay so that it doesn't get confused if it's all in the same portion of the script. Okay, so we've hit our trigger button for the first time. The saber on was true. It made it big. Then we sent this event. It flipped saber on to false. And now when we hit the trigger button again, it's going to read saber on to false. And what happens when saber on is false? Well, we're going to turn off our trigger detection, right, so that it can't hurt us in its off state. And we're going to scale the blade back down to being teeny tiny. And we're going to stop the sound on the sound loop. That's it. I know that's already a bunch, but that is the absolute basic components of the lightsaber, right? Has to turn on, has to turn off. So that's what's going on here. That's it. Hey everyone, sorry for the weird edit. I know that was a lot for just one video, so I'm going to make another lightsaber video where I talk about return scripts, hit events, and putting it all together. So stay tuned, and I'll see you then. Bye-bye.